What is going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider is back once again with another edition of the Four Corner Podcast, which means it's time to talk pro wrestling. And this week, I really was not expecting a whole lot to go on. And while there was some interesting things that took place. As we know, this was the final week on the road to AEW Dynasty, which takes place tonight. We're recording this Sunday morning, so this evening we will see the AEW Dynasty PPV take place. And on paper, the match card is actually pretty solid. It's actually one of AEW's best cards I've seen to date. And I know people said that about AEW Revolution, but the one thing that I think people forget about AEW, no matter what you want to call them, no matter what problems or issues they may have, the one thing that they do is they do very well about delivering on pay-per-views. And Sting's retirement back at the AEW Revolution pay-per-view in March, a lot of people enjoyed it. I didn't think it was like the best show ever, which a lot of people kind of gave praise that was AEW's best show. I don't think exactly that, but I do think tonight has a lot of potential to be one of AEW's best, maybe even best ever pay-per-views. The two matches that obviously have my intrigue most, well, if I'm being honest, there are about 3 or 4. But the top 2 for me are the first match that was announced, which was Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson. That is a dream match for several people, and especially if you're somebody who appreciates independent wrestling. These are two, not in any disparaging way do I make this comment, these are two indie darlings that have made it to the big time. And I honestly can't wait to see what they pull off. This could potentially be AEW's best wrestling match ever. And I know that's a high praise to say, but when you've got arguably one of, if not the best technical wrestler in today pro wrestling, that being Bryan Danielson, and then you've got a guy who calls himself the aerial assassin, but he has gone out of his way over the last several years to really not just be known as a flippy-dippy guy, but has really molded his craft into a very solid professional wrestler, that being Will Ospreay. Some refer to him as the Billy Goat, which I think is funny. But I honestly think this could be the best match that we've seen. This could even be better than what Danielson and Omega did at the first Grand Slam in Arthur Ashe. A lot of people really enjoyed Omega and Ospreay, both from the New Japan and the AEW encounters. Both were great matches too. But I do think this one could top both of those. And we also have the AEW Championship on the line with Samoa Joe defending his title against Swerve Strickland. Will this be Swerve's coming out party? We will find out tonight, because we all know that AEW has been on fire. You've heard me make the argument that there's 2 people that you could look at as being the face of AEW. One of them gets that title shot tonight, and the other is in the match that I just previously talked about. So this could be a big night for the future of AEW. Will they crown Swerve the champion? I don't know. I really don't know if they're going to pull the trigger or not. I hope they do. I think Swerve is right there next to Ospreay, which is why I say you could make an argument for either one of them being the face of AEW currently. He's who I'm taking in the match. I've always appreciated Samoa Joe and his body of work since I first laid eyes on him back in TNA, back in 2004, 2005-ish. And to see him be the same guy, essentially, that he's been since back then, this also is part of who he was in Ring of Honor. And to see this level of success that he's garnered in his career is absolutely amazing. He's deserved every bit of it. He's always been the consummate professional, and he has done wonders as champion for AEW, even just the short amount of time that he's been champion. He only has been champion since the end of December. So to see what he's done with the title and still have that aura, that presence of just a straight up badass that can take on anyone, anywhere, at any time, he still carries that aura because it's very real for him. And I think he and Swerve can put on a great match. But again, I'm taking Swerve in that one, and if I didn't say it previously, I'm taking Ospreay against Danielson, even though I am a very big Bryan Danielson fan. I just think that this is the night that we see the potential of AEW's future. And if they can steer the course of the ship the right way, somehow, some way, we all know my opinions on some of the backstage antics that have gone on lately. I do think that this is the chance for AEW to really cement itself as competing for not just wrestling fans, but also for notoriety amongst the wrestling world, as well as potentially going into the pop culture realm, because Swerve could be a great representation for that if he's crowned champion. We'll see what happens. Also, we've got the FTR Young Bucks ladder match, which we talked about last week, and how I was not a fan of them incorporating the All-In Wembley footage as part of the build-up for this because of the personal connection with FTR and Punk, as well as the Young Bucks, and seemingly all but indoctrinating Jack Perry into their new version of the Elite with Okada, who also has his own match to worry about tonight, which is another match I'm intrigued by, Okada versus Pac. Should be a fun match for the Continental title. Still taking Okada in that one. Bucks, I'm taking in the ladder match as well, even though I'm a bigger FTR fan. Those are just 4 of my picks. And you know what? I'll throw up the rest of my picks right now so that you can see who I've predicted to win their respective matches for AEW Dynasty tonight. But I also want to move forward and talk about the announcement that was made on AEW Rampage. Some people think it was a work. I actually poked fun a little bit on the actual AEW post about it and just simply put that. And it already got 2 people to comment on it because, you know, wrestling fans like to correct people when they're wrong. So it was just me having a bit of fun. But in all seriousness, congratulations goes out to Ruby Soho and Angelo Parker. It looks as if that this is indeed not a work. They have announced their pregnancy with their first child, and that is an awesome bit of news to share with the world and for them personally. I know, as being a father myself, when you get that news, it can send you into a shock of just, oh my Lord, what next kind of thing. But once you settle into it, and if you haven't already, it does become exciting, and it really is no greater joy than being a parent. So congratulations to Ruby Soho and Angelo Parker. I wish you nothing but a safe and well-off pregnancy, and congratulations coming into parenthood. Get ready for that long ride ahead. Now, aside from the AEW stuff, because I don't want to take away from what is going to be a big night for them, and we don't need to talk about any more backstage antics right now, mainly because I didn't really hear much of any of it this past week, other than Tony Khan also still defending the decision to air the All-In footage. I don't want to put any negative on them because they have had enough for over a week now, and let's focus on Dynasty being a great show tonight. But let's also shift gears and talk about TNA, because TNA had a Rebellion event, which is one of their big pay-per-views, one of their big 4 pay-per-views that they put on each year. And they went back to Las Vegas in the Palms Casino, and they had some pretty interesting things take place. There were 3 main returns that took place. First being Mike Santana has officially come back to TNA Wrestling, and I think this could be good for him since obviously if you've read any of his stuff that has gone on backstage, AEW just didn't work out for him personally or professionally, but he made a name for himself, obviously with Ortiz, when they were part of the new LAX back in Impact's days, when it was more of what I would refer to as the dark ages, when people really didn't know the things that Impact could offer because there wasn't a whole lot of notice on Impact/TNA back then. Now he has a chance to shine once again as a solo star, and I think he has the potential to do it. He's already got the drive that he wants to be a success, and I think TNA is a great spot for him to not only come back to a place that's familiar to him, but also a chance for him to break out and show what he can do on his own. Then you had the return of the Death Machine. Sami Callihan, who has been away from TNA for a while, made his return last night as well. But the biggest news that came out of returns was that of one broken Matt Hardy. That's right. Matt Hardy's AEW deal has expired. He is still a free agent, per his own words, but he returned in grand fashion to TNA last night, surprising Moose at the end of a great match with Nick Nemeth for the world title. And he is now on the TNA landscape. I can't wait to see what broken Matt Hardy, who was created in TNA, can't wait to see what he does now in this new run with TNA. One can only think that, depending on Jeff's deal with AEW, could we potentially see a broken Hardy's reunion? Only time will tell if that takes place. But TNA has had a few ups and downs and woes over the last few months. Oh, another match to highlight before I go any further with my thought. Josh Alexander and Hammerstone had a last man standing match that was unbelievable to witness. And if you haven't, go out of your way to check it out. Both guys put on their working boots last night. Alexander taking a tack spot that was just ungodly painful, but still managed to come through and pick up the W over a very game Alex Hammerstone, who I am so glad Hammerstone is part of the TNA roster. Unbelievable talent, did great things at MLW, and I continue to see the success that he wants to translate over to TNA. It'll be a great start for him as well. But more TNA news, the apparent talkings of the return of a certain TNA knockout who made waves of being also the first female Impact/TNA world champion. Nothing but controversy surrounded her for the longest time. If you don't know who I'm talking third generation star Tessa Blanchard. And there was a time where Miss Blanchard was hot on everybody's radar because she was just a consummate pros pro that honestly could seemingly do no wrong. And especially during her TNA stint, Impact stint, whatever you want to refer to it as, she had nothing but a rocket ship attached to her, and she became their golden goose for a while. I honestly understand why people are hesitant towards Tessa Blanchard because of the things that had happened previously. For those that don't know, there had been talks of backstage bullying as well as some racist remarks that were made towards another fellow wrestler. But there was a photo that was posted recently that both of them had been able to sit down, hash out their differences, and are as cool as could be now. And that's something that I wish people would remember because Hulk Hogan kind of has had the same treatment after he made some racist remarks on a videotape back in the late 2000s. And still people want to chastise him for that. Same with Tessa Blanchard. And this is my thought. I understand when people say something that is off color, no pun intended. But if you're still going to vilify them years later after the incident has taken place, I really hope you're able to look at yourself and hold yourself to the same standards that you expect these people to hold themselves to. People like a Hulk Hogan or a Tessa Blanchard. If you're going out and you're using a derivative of the same word that apparently both of them had used, we know one for sure, one has been more hearsay but has witnesses to it. If they have gone out of their way to try to make amends, or if you personally are somebody, like I said, that uses that word in some form or fashion, whether it be as a derogatory term or as a term of endearment, then you really have no room to talk for yourself because you're using the same word that you're chastising others for. And it doesn't matter the meaning of which they were using it in. Again, in my opinion, when it comes towards that word specifically, it shouldn't be used, period, until no one is offended by it. If there is still at least one person that is offended by that word, to me, it shouldn't be used. So I don't use it in that kind of context. Others shouldn't either, but I also believe in people deserve second chances. If Tessa Blanchard has gone out of her way to make amends for her wrongdoings, who are we to continue judgment on her? And who are we to say that she doesn't deserve another shot? So if she is in talks with TNA, and if she does make her eventual return, I'm all for it. I've always thought, at least in ring-wise, she was solid as could be. And I still believe to this day, especially with her working so much down in Mexico, I can see her being a big deal once again if things are done the right way. So, if Tessa is on her way back, good for her, because quite frankly, I think a great feud could be had between her and Jordynne Grace at this point. I know they've worked a little bit together in the past, but man, putting them on forefront for the Knockouts Championship to bring her back into the company, I think would be amazing business for TNA. Now, on from any kind of negatory news, but again, I didn't see that as negative. I personally would love to see Tessa come back. Let's shift over to WWE and let's get the bad news out of the way first. On Friday evening, there were announcements of 5 releases in WWE. The 5 releases were Zion Quinn, Xia Li, who I personally was disappointed to see go, Sangha, Veer, part of Indus Sher, and their leader, Jinder Mahal. The latter of those 3, I should say, were more shocking than anything, just because WWE had been trying to make an impact into the Indian marketplace, if you will, for quite some time. And I know I said those really weird, but they have. They have always been trying to cater towards the 1.4 billion population that is in India, because India loves professional wrestling. And there was even some, I won't call it outrage, but some remarks made by Sangha of Indus Sher, where he was saying, if you are wanting to make an impact in a country like India, filled with 1.4 billion people, but you have no representation of Indians on your show, well, how do you expect to capitalize on that market? And I agree, because me personally, I actually thought the Jinder Mahal and Indus Sher faction itself actually had a lot of potential behind it. Jinder's still in phenomenal shape, and Sangha and Veer as well, 2 big guys that also in unbelievable shape. It was disappointing that they didn't do more with that group, and it seems like there's more to the story of the 3 of them being let go. Maybe we'll find out more in time as time goes forward, and I think it's only a matter of time before you see them on the indie scene, and not just right after the 90 days, but just in general. Because can you imagine, also with the history that Jinder has with the Bollywood boys, can you imagine if you could unite the Bollywood boys with Indus Sher and Jinder Mahal as like the figurehead? Man, could you actually make a pretty dominant Indian faction for the independent scene. I think it would be amazing business for all 5 of them to work together. And who knows, maybe that will come down the line here soon. I think it could do great business for them personally, as well as showing representation on the independent professional wrestling level for the Indian culture. There's a lot of potential there. So maybe we'll see that, maybe we won't. We will only find out 90 days after these releases have occurred, because that is when the no compete is up. And then I expect to see big things from all parties. And honestly, like I said, Xia Li was the one I was most disappointed in, because I saw her evolution from the time she came into WWE to the more present day. She had a look to her, and she had an aura that I really wish WWE would have capitalized on. I saw a news article earlier today before I recorded that was basically stating that they felt Xia Li was just a victim of the last remnants of the Vince McMahon era. The presentation that was given to her, the character that was given to her, just didn't seemingly fit with her, and I think I would agree with that sentiment. If this had happened in the Paul Levesque / Triple H era, because I know he was big on Xia Li down in the Black and Gold NXT for a little bit, I really think we'd be talking a different story here if she would have been debuted under his regime. I know that it was kind of still an opportunity, and maybe a missed opportunity, for him to not cash in on that opportunity when he took the head of creative. But remember, he's only been head of creative for a short amount of time. And I mean full creative, not just with Vince in his ear kind of thing. So I think things would have been different. I still hope to see nothing but good things from her. I would not be surprised if she shows up in AEW when her non-compete is up. And she made a lot of good friends that actually work over in AEW, as well as people that are still on the WWE side. So I hope to see big things from Xia Li. As for Zion Quinn, I never really saw anything big from him anyway, and that's no offense to him as a talent. It just wasn't something that I noticed in him, but I could be completely wrong. And with his beau, Harley Cameron, over at AEW, I would fully expect to see him make his AEW debut once his 90 days, or considering that he never went up to the main roster and could be on an NXT contract, we know that theirs was only 30 days. Don't know if that's still the same now. It was back with Aleister Black when he became Malachi Black, and that was thanks to an error in WWE's part. But it is possible that we might see Zion Quinn sooner rather than later, and I fully would expect him to show up in AEW and have something to do with Harley Cameron. But before we get to the good news, let's talk one more bad thing for the WWE. And that is the injury to now former Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley. It was so disappointing to hear that a freak accident on the spot that took place, not this past week, but the following week, the night after WrestleMania, and to have her have a shoulder injury occur from just taking a bump off of the wall, a freak accident as they called it, it's disappointing because Rhea had been doing some excellent work, had put on great matches, was a great representation for the women's world title, and now she's seemingly going to be out for at least a 5-month period, which great, puts her back into the WWE fold in the latter part of 2024, but it's still disappointing because she was just doing great work. And I think this rivalry with her and Liv Morgan was going to be something great. And I still think it will be. This just adds more credence to it because now both women, at least storyline wise, have caused an injury to the other that's put them on the sideline, which just adds more of a personal vendetta for both of the participants. So I look forward to seeing how they continue that rivalry once Rhea does return. A new women's world champion will be crowned tomorrow night, again recording Sunday morning, but of course dropping this episode on Monday means tonight we will see the new women's world champion take place in a battle royal. Some people think Liv Morgan is the shoe-in favorite. Some would even say Nia Jax. I think Nia Jax has a great shot at winning and has done nothing but great things since she's come back. Liv makes a lot of sense to me, but could there be someone else that may be waiting in the wings? I don't know. Time will tell. We'll see tonight. We also have the draft coming up this week, starting on Friday and concluding a week from today. On that edition of Monday Night Raw. SmackDown is going to be the first episode, and we know NXT is going to be involved in this year's draft as well. People can go from and come to NXT once again as WWE looks to reestablish NXT as the third brand and undo whatever damage was done by Vince when he demoted it back to a more of a developmental program, which has actually been successful in the long run. But I know for me personally, being a black and gold fan since day one of actually discovering it on Hulu of all things back before the network, I am very happy to see that NXT has gotten somewhat of its momentum back. I fully expect them to maintain that momentum, and they have gone back to their grassroots of being a developmental program and a successful one at that when you look at the characters they've built. Tiffany Stratton, Braun Breaker, and Carmella Hayes. Trick Williams also. Those are just 4 names right off the bat. Tony D'Angelo is another name that for me personally has been a lot of fun to see grow, and I love the mobster, the family character that he possesses. Can't wait to see that on the main roster as well. That'll be a lot of fun. And this past Friday on SmackDown, we now have it solidified as to the very first match and opponent for the WWE Champion, Cody Rhodes. Backlash in France, the WWE title will be on the line in a match that I personally cannot wait to see and has a lot of chances of being a burn the house down quite of a match. That being Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles. This match has a lot of built-in history where both men have been to a lot of the same companies but have never faced each other. Both men at one point in time were leaders of the Bullet Club faction, which is funny to think that a lot of the Bullet Club is in WWE. Actually, 3 of the 4 founding members are in WWE right now. But to see Cody Rhodes go from being, as he liked to say, undeniable is where he's at now, but from being that guy that undesirable, there we go. It took me a minute to get there, but I got there. From going to undesirable to undeniable to now undisputed is amazing. And to see where AJ, who was really typecasted when he first got in, as Vince didn't see much with him, from him to go from being a guy that wasn't really much expected from him to being one of the figureheads of WWE in 2016 and through the next few years, Vince being won over by him, and now he's on this lone wolf run again in WWE, similar to what he did in the final run of his TNA career. This is one of the best versions of AJ Styles, both physically and creatively as well for WWE. I think he and Cody Rhodes have an opportunity to have a barn burner of a match at Backlash in France. Rhodes, Styles, WWE title, I think is money and is a great way to start Cody Rhodes' undisputed WWE title reign. Great first opponent, has a lot of traction to potentially go further than just Backlash, but we'll take it one step at a time. Let's look forward to that match because it's going to be, I think, something a lot of people will talk about when it's all said and done. Guys, that's all I got for you this week here with the Four Corner Podcast. What do you think is going to take place on AEW Dynasty tonight, live on pay-per-view? And are you excited about the Cody Rhodes, AJ Styles WWE title match at Backlash? Also, what do you think is going to take place in the draft? Who do you think will go where? Sound off on all those topics down in our comment section. And if you haven't already, you better have subscribed to this YouTube channel. Make sure you hit your little bell notification so that you're notified when a video is uploaded to the channel. Also, make sure you're following us on all the social medias. That would be Facebook, Instagram, and X. Follow me personally at X on @Travis_4CP. It's also the same tag on Instagram. And I will be back again next week to talk more pro wrestling. But during that time, all of you take care. God bless you. And remember to always keep loving pro wrestling.